Welcome back to the Anxiety Slayer podcast. I'm Shann here today with Stephen C. Hayes, and I am thrilled to have a conversation with him. We're going to be talking about how you can learn to pivot toward what matters and liberate your mind. Stephen C. Hayes is the Nevada Foundation Professor at the Department of Psychology at the University of Nevada, an author of 38 books and more than 540 scientific articles. He's shown his research how language and thought leads to human suffering and has developed acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a powerful therapy method that is useful in a wide variety of areas. His popular book, Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life, was featured in Time magazine along with several other major media outlets, and for a time was the #1 best-selling self-help book in the United States. If you have a chance, after listening to this conversation today, you can also find his TEDx talk on YouTube, and I highly recommend that you watch that as well. Hello, Stephen. Welcome to the Anxiety Slayer podcast.
I'm glad to be here with you.
I'm glad to have you here. It was a pleasure finding you. I'm grateful to your publicist for reaching out, and I'd like to start our conversation today with how you define the essence of psychological flexibility.
Well, it's being able to feel your feelings without needless defense, to think your thoughts with enough of a gap that you can see them for what they are and you're not immediately entangled with them. And then with that little bit of separation, enough that you can sort of be open to your own experience, to come into the present moment, inside and out, and notice what's possible. Notice what's going on, and to do that consciously from this part of you that isn't just the story you tell or the persona you put on, but the kind of more observing or transcendent part of you, this more spiritual part of you, conscious part of you, a purely aware part of you. And then be able to allocate your attention in a way that's flexible and fluid and voluntary and fits what you're trying to do towards really would bring meaning and purpose to your life here. What do you want to be about? What are you up to? What do you care about? What are the qualities that you want to put into your next life moments? And then to build habits of doing that. So even when you're not watching, when you're kind of going semi-mindless, that you can trust that you have habits of values-based action instead of habits of avoidance or of entanglement with thought or trying to be right or prove how great and grand you are, or other things that you probably don't really want to be about anyway, but the mind pulls you into doing. In area after area after area, if you mismanage what I just said, your life heads in a negative direction. Positive part of you manage it heads in a positive direction. So really this new book is about both dealing with anxiety, depression, all those kinds of things, but also living a life worth living and seeking out a more joyful life in which you get to be whole and free.
Yeah, I really enjoyed reading A Liberated Mind, and I'm grateful that you've written it. And before we dig into the book a little bit, I think I'd like to start with acceptance and commitment therapy and talk a little bit about what that is and how it can support our listeners who often struggle with anxiety attacks and health anxiety. Those two are the top of the line for the last 10 years that come forward. Shann and Nanga, how can we change this? And I know that psychological flexibility is a part of that, and that ACT is a part of that, and would love your thoughts there.
Yeah. ACT is a therapy. It's also a training method. We call it acceptance and commitment training when we're doing it in business and organizations and things like that. Because the core message is just being a human being. It doesn't have to just be in a therapy and psychotherapy context, but we've spent about 40 years now developing a set of methods that move psychological flexibility. Turns out we're not the only ones. A lot of the evidence-based therapies that are out there, empirically supported ones, actually move some of these processes too, which is fine. So we don't have to be too grabby about it or, my way is the only way. No, we're going after these common pathways towards a prosperous life. What ACT does is sort of target each of these 6 flexibility processes. Phrased positively, what it teaches is acceptance skills, this kind of backing up and noticing your mind, we call diffusion. That's a made up word. The kind of mindfulness skills of being able to notice that you're aware and being able to attend flexibly, fluidly, and voluntarily to the now. And then values and committed action. So if you simplify it, we're targeting being aware and open and actively engaged in life. And turns out that's helpful everywhere a human mind goes. It isn't just anxiety and depression. It's dieting and exercise and stepping up to the challenges of physical disease. But it's not just that. It's your relationships, your business, whether or not you can compete well in sports. I mean, the number of studies now is orders in the thousands, and the number of randomized trials in several hundred. And so that's the story that's in the book, as a 40-year science journey, my personal journey, but also just here's how to learn these things and look around you and you see that in your family and in the modern world, these are skills that we need to be able to step into what is clearly a more challenging world with our constant exposure to pain and judgment and comparison with the computer that you have in your pocket.
Sure. There's just so much coming at us all the time. Let's talk a little bit about your personal journey, because I know that you are on this journey with so many who suffer with anxiety and who have had panic attacks, coming from your place of your own experience, and then your work, obviously inspired, and going right back to being that 8-year-old boy. I mean, that story, and the story of the inner child, and the work that we need to do there is also.
I tell that story in the TEDx talk. If you just Google it, you can find it. There's 2 TEDx talks I have. One is kind of fun, and it's about diffusion skills, and one was a little more challenging for me because I had to walk back into the worst of my panic disorder and the moment where I hit bottom and turned in a new direction. And that pivot is in the title of the book.
Right. And that's what, let's talk about that pivot. So not spending so much time talking about the experience that led to the pivot, but so many who are listening in today are in desperate need and open and available for learning how to pivot.
Yeah. And what the metaphor of pivot is to take what's inside, what's leading you in the wrong direction. You can feel it, that it's leading you there. Of course, when you're struggling with panic or something, that it's not workable, but you may not know what's underneath it. What are you really yearning for? And there's probably several things. I've tried to unpack them in the book, but metaphor of pivot is to take the energy of what you really want, what's underneath that anxiety struggle, what's underneath that avoidance, what's underneath that entanglement, or putting life on hold, or the other things we do to get it in our way. And take that energy and put it in a new direction. I mean, if you're dancing with somebody, if they're not moving, it's pretty hard to dance with them. If they're moving, you can swing them around, you can put them in a new direction, but dead still, no. And people who are suffering are moving, they're just moving in the wrong direction. In a way, there's a deep lesson inside our misery that puts us just a hair's width away from a different direction where life can open up. And sometimes hitting bottom is how you get there. And that's what happened to me with a panic disorder that gradually took away everything as a young professor, of being unable even to give a lecture to 5 undergraduates. And I just couldn't make sound come out of my mouth. I got so anxious. The bottom was hit at 2 a.m, sitting on a shag carpet, thinking that I'm having a heart attack and have to call the ambulance.
And the way you described that everything that was going through your mind, the whole screenplay of it, if you will, is what so many suffer with. That incredibly visual, just so real. It's so real. What that, as you call, the dictator within, where that story goes. It just
and in the path. I mean, people who are listening who've struggled with this, they know there's something so strange about it or otherworldly about it, and yet it has an internal logic to it that just draws you in, and you don't see any way out, and you struggle and you fight and you fight. And it just walked me down with into this pit over 3 years, to the point where I was more and more and more focused on anxiety. By the end, probably 95% of every waking day was focused on anxiety, watching out, making sure I can escape, making sure I'm close to the exit, et cetera, all the logical, reasonable, sensible, and pathological things you do when you're in a life and death struggle with it. In the TEDx, you see me hitting bottom and actually screaming out loud. That weird sounding scream only came out of my mouth 3 times. Once when I was caught in a machine in an aluminum factory that made aluminum foil. They forgot I was deep inside this house-sized machine, and they turned it on.
Oh my goodness!
And I was about to be chopped in half, and they heard me screaming and turned it off. But the other one was in the bottom of my panic disorder, and then the TEDx talk, and I'm never going to do that scream again.
Yeah, good.
Because and doing that TEDx was so hard, because to revisit that place where you think there's no way out, that you've lost everything, that life is over almost.
And it's like the suggestion of it, the going back and revisiting it almost feels like an invitation to bring it all back in, like to wash it over you and pull you out into the undertow.
Oh, I know. Well, before I went and did this TED talk, I got like a foot away from my wife, looked her in the eyes and said, I can't do this. I just can't do it. I can't do it. And she said, she's so sweet. She said, just be yourself.
And I just love how you just sat down.
Yeah.
I thought that was so incredibly powerful. It made, I could see people just, obviously not that we're there live, but the people watching after, and just really, wow, that's so smart. Just sit down.
Yeah, because that's where I was.
Tell your story. And so thank you for that. And, you.
Well, and you asked about what that pivot was. So the pivot is, and what you see was to realize, after the scream was, there's no way out. I'm doomed, basically, like being stuck inside that machine. I'm just bound up. I know that life is over. And I don't know how long it was, but I know it was a long time, because when I stood up, my whole body was aching, and I was a much younger man than I am now. Somewhere in there came a pivot, a turn, not of a way out, but as a way in. And it was as if I became aware that there was this voice that had been telling me that I had to run and fight and hide in order to be able to live whole and free. And I'd been following that voice, thinking it's my voice. It's my voice within, and it's my thoughts, but it's also things I've been told, and the voice of criticisms from others. And, we all have, even young children understand, if you put Goofy on one shoulder and Goofy with horns on the other shoulder, Goofy with a halo, Goofy with the horns, 4-year-olds understand that. We've got like these little arguments and battles and voices, and not just one, several. And I had disappeared into that. When I had that moment of kind of waking up, I actually said out loud, I think. I actually hear the words, so I think I said them out loud. And what I said is, I don't know who you are. I'm talking to the voice within as if it's an outside thing. I don't know who you are, but apparently you can make me hurt and you can make me suffer. But I tell you one thing you cannot do. You can't make me turn from my own experience. You can't do it.
Wow.
And that my life is in a whole different direction.
Yeah.
And I know I'm talking to people right now who are suffering so much, and that turn is it's not going to come that way. But there are turns in here that if you're going in one direction and you turn, everything is different, because now you see things differently. You're heading in a different direction. And that turn didn't take very much. It's just an instant away. Right. So what if, and in the book, I walk through 6 turns, 6 pivots, where people can take this energy. Like the energy I think I was pursuing there was, I need to be able to feel But the only way I can do that is to feel the good stuff, not the bad stuff. So I have to get rid of this feeling so that I can feel at all.
Mm.
What was I yearning to feel? Some of that unfolded later on when it turned out some of what I was yearning to feel was not just good stuff.
Right.
And I tell the story of a couple years into the journey that night on the carpet took me towards, which is I'm going to walk towards a life worth living, committed to, never again, I will not run from me.
Mm.
And doing that one step at a time, and then discovering that I've been running from memories of domestic violence in my home, and that I was just a little tyke, with 8 years old, hiding under my bed, hearing my parents fight with my dad drunk, and my mother who had OCD and was depressed and shrieking at him. And I'm hearing these horrible noises, and I'm thinking there's going to be blood on the floor when I go out. And I remember again this voice in my mind saying, I'm going to do something at age 8. And then realizing if I go out there, I might be hit.
Yeah.
And I just kind of pulled back under the bed and cried. The point is, that feeling is why I'm a psychologist, because I'm going to do something.
Yeah.
And I had got it. So I had gotten it so that the only way that I can feel is feeling the good stuff. That when you do that, you disconnect yourself from your own wisdom, from your own history, from your learning, from the mistakes. And not just that, from what you really care about, because you hurt where you care and you care where you hurt. And so.
And it's where you're most vulnerable.
It's where you're most vulnerable, where you're most woundable. Those soft spots, that underbelly is where you care.
And where we often feel like if we go there, we're weak.
We're weak.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to be strong by not being fully who we are.
Right.
Explain to me how that's going to work. So there was another pivot there. In that case, the pivot towards meaning by choice. When I'm going to do something about what? About human suffering. Well, that means walking into places that are really painful for me.
Yeah.
I mean, even doing what we're doing right now, I can feel tears are not very far away if I wanted to go there.
Oh, me too. We
Yeah, you can sense it.
Oh, I'm with you. And
that's not a bad thing, but your mind.
Before we came together today, I was talking to Ananga, and I said, I very well might cry. There's just something about his energy and his transparency, and some of our story is similar. I wasn't sure. There were times in your book I wasn't sure if I could keep reading.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, yeah, maybe I'll just skip over this part right now. That's right. Maybe I'll just, and then I thought, okay. And then went back to it. And then, of course, the break led me to your TEDx talk. And I'm like, oh, that's tricky. There it is. There he is sitting on the stage being so, in my mind, so brave and so transparent. And so I'm grateful.
I've witnessed so much bravery inside this work. I mean, human beings, we're such magnificent creatures. I mean, we know how to suffer in ways that non-human animals don't, but we show such ability to move forward. And so the revert, we hurt where we care where we hurt. Well, part of what that means is people who are suffering with anxiety, these kind of struggles, have actually learned things that are really important and will connect them to others if they can learn how to make this pivot, make these turns. I mean, I'll give you an example. A thing I sometimes say to my clients is, okay, you want to remove anxiety, you want to remove it, you want to subtract it, you want to eliminate it. I say, okay, I'll do this. I'll wave a magic wand, we'll 100% eliminate this. But here's the deal. You'll have no understanding of it. You'll have no memory of it. You'll not be able to connect to it. And when your children or your spouse or somebody you love comes to you and wants to talk to you about sadness or fear, you'll have no idea what they're talking about.
No empathy.
So here's my magic wand. You're going to ask me to wave it? Not a single person wants to make that deal. We want the deal in which we only get to feel what our mind says is good.
Mm-hmm.
But our mind is so stupid. It'll tell us that sad is bad.
Right.
Yesterday, we got an email that my sweet first secretary of my publishing company, who became the nanny for my now 14-year-old son and raised him, died after a long battle with illness in Sweden. This is my son's honorary grandmother. I mean, every Saturday for his 14, once she moved away about 10 years ago, every Saturday they're having a conversation between the two of them about the things he's learning and stuff, etc. The three of us, my wife and Stevie and I, just hugged each other and cried. And then we told stories about the sweet things that she's done and the honorable things she's done and what we'll most miss about her. And it doesn't come in the way your mind says it should come.
Right.
Mind says treacle is a good thing. It says a smiley face button slapped permanently on your face is a good thing. It's a freaking lie.
It is a lie.
And people who suffer, the people who are listening to me right now who are suffering, I hope if you look at that TED, you'll know I've been there. You are the chosen ones. You're the lucky ones who have an opportunity to see the delusions that your mind produces that tells us that not feeling is a good thing. Subtracting feelings is a good thing. That you should just hold your breath and walk through life. That message is killing people. It's crushing people. It's crushing the souls of people.
It is.
And we see it around us. I mean, our young people are more anxious, more distressed. And it's not just self-report. There's more suicides. So we have to figure out a way to be able to walk in a world where, yes, we know there's pain happening in the world. Now you can see it in the computer in your pocket. Yes, we can hear all these judgments and comparisons. You can see the gold-plated toilet seats of the billionaires if you're struggling to not have enough money. That's true. And we've got to bring modern minds into that modern world where we get to be whole human beings who can feel and care and love and commit and create habits that serve us, that honor the life trajectories that we're on and the people who have loved us to help us lift us up. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry for going on a rant.
No, I'm glad you are, because one of the things that Ananga and I struggle with a lot, and after 10 years of producing Anxiety Slayer, and now we have a private Facebook group, and one of the things that comes up over and over and over is the interest in numbing what's going on.
Yeah.
An interest in talking about, hey, have you taken this medicine or that medicine or this medicine or that medicine, and how does it affect you, and da-da-da-da-da. And we finally just got back into the group and said, these posts are not going to remain. This is everybody's chemistry is different. Everybody's story is different. Everybody, this isn't a place to be, how do we numb it out and what meds do we take? And we don't have any business making those recommendations based on our backgrounds, and we haven't gone to school
for
that. And frankly, that's not, our goal is more holistically facing and being with, and letting people like you help these folks make those decisions.
I've been on the tranquilizers. I've taken the beta blockers. I've done, and there's a role for medications. There is a role. It's much more limited than we've turned it loose on the world. 1 out of 4 women last year in the United States were on antidepressants. And if you look at the data, and I'm a science guy, that is vastly, by orders of magnitude, way beyond anything that's sensible. You go out and fish in the streams and you catch fish, you're consuming psychoactive medications that are in the rivers. Something's wrong.
No doubt.
And just look at the proof of the pudding. When you take that biomedicalization of human suffering and you say, if you're suffering anxiety or sadness, you've got a disease. No, there are no proven psychiatric diseases that have emerged from these syndromes Even the NIMH no longer wants to fund studies focused on that. 10 years ago, they made a turn and they said, no more. We're not doing big randomized trials focused on DSM syndromes, which are all the labels that you walk around with, by the way. They're ICD or DSM labels. And what they're trying to dig down to are processes of change. Now, they've made a big bet that they're brain processes. I'd make a different bet. But in the book, I'll walk you through all of that. I mean, if you care about a kind of the science side, it's in there, but not in a way that distracts from this more human issue, which is, look, if you look at what we're doing, we're using medications that produce the happy numb, except numb's not happy.
No, it's not.
The happy numb is being able to slog through. And numbing down is not, yeah, I get it. And as with the right rationale and with limited course so that your body doesn't react to it. That's the other part. Your body reacts to this. I'll give you an example. There's mouse models with, if you start hitting mice, let's say, with opiates, boom, boom, boom. Do you know the mice are now more sensitive to pain once the opiates go away? Because, of course, what the body does is it says, basically, whoa, something's way out of whack. I got way too much more of this. I think I'll push in this other direction to keep homeostasis. It's not logical. I'm just giving voice to primitive processes that are, 500 million years old. We learned how to feel and remember 500 million years ago during the Cambrian period. All organisms that evolved then are able to, for example, react to pain based on conditioning. Every single one of them, but not before. Jellyfish, no. Snakes, yes. That's there for a reason. You've got feelers in the tips of your fingers. And yeah, you could do something that would eliminate the feeling in your hands, but they're more likely to be injured. And oh, by the way, if you try to do anything that requires fine motor movement, you can't do it. And you easily could put your hand in something that's like a fire or something. I mean, people who have leprosy do that. They actually put their hands in fires and not know it because the necrotic process eliminates feeling in their fingers. Next thing you know, they don't have fingers. And metaphorically, this is our model of health. We're climbing into this cultural model that if I don't feel anxious, that's good. No, it's not good. You need anxiety. Is there any emotion you can think of, any emotion that you don't pay good money to produce? You buy the books, you go to the movies, you buy the songs, you ride the roller coasters. Well, what the heck are we doing? Trying to create a place where numb is our model of health? As a panic disorder person, I get, it'd be like, if somebody said sound is good, I say yes. Okay, put the speaker right next to the microphone and have a feedback screech.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. I get that. And panic is like that. But let me just ask, where did the amplifier come from? And the amplifier, I think, is very often your conscious, deliberate, purposeful attempts to control it. This is a new thing. This is only 200,000 to 2 million years old. Dogs and cats don't know how to do that. You and I know how to do that because we can take what you and I are doing right now, symbolic thinking, which allows us to problem solve. And we can turn our own emotional and cognitive life into a problem to be solved. Take our own body and make it the enemy. How are you going to solve that problem when your history is going to go with you? There's no delete button in the nervous system. I will never, ever, short of brain injury, forget those fights between my mom and dad, who, by the way, were very loving people. I mean, don't be judging them. Yeah. They just didn't know how to get out of their own way, and their alcoholism and anxiety disorders and depression and all of that. But that's not going to leave my head. It has no place else to go.
No, it doesn't leave.
If you have a panic disorder, guess where your memories of those panic attacks are going to go? They're going to go with you. So what are you going to do with that? Well, how about learning? How about learning from them and carrying them with you with the way you might carry something that's precious? Mm-hmm. Because within that are deep lessons or wisdom are avenues forward, are pivots towards a life worth living. So,
Yeah, the acceptance and the sweetness and the knowing that as hard as that was, as much as that was so frightening, that you can carry it with you in a very loving way.
in a loving way, in a
In a
kind
very
way.
loving way. I mean, you say, love isn't everything. It's the only thing.
Because I
Yeah.
really think that's true. Standing with yourself in a loving way. I know some people might hear this as kind of finger wagging. Oh, how do you do that? Well, that's why you need to read and seek out. And of course, therapy can help. But I try to do this. And it's not just my book. I mean, there's lots of things out there from ACT and the things that are allied. But you use the word acceptance for the first time in this conversation. It's the first word in the name of the things that I do. And just to show the difference, most people listening have had somebody say, oh, you just have to accept it. Mm-hmm. They've had acceptance thrown at them as almost an epithet. And that kind of critical mind part is the same part that tells you have to run or fight or hide or numb out. Mm-hmm. And the kind of acceptance we're talking about would be if you had a gift that was really precious to you, maybe something you had created, and you went to a friend and you made this with your own hands, and you took the gift out and passed it over to your friend, you might say, here, would you accept this? Mm. You not mean, will you tolerate that? Will you resign yourself to my gift? Can you put up with a gift?
Right.
You don't mean that. You mean, will you willingly take this gift? Maybe it's just a little thing that I made, but it's a sign of something, and it carries something. Well, it's the same way. When life gives you, let's say, a panic attack, inside there are really important things. When it gives you memories of abuse, inside there are really important things. And life's asking, here, would you accept this? And yeah, it's not what you would draw up, because the mind will say, we need sugar soup. But the wiser part of you, if I ask you, what are the things you most remember that most moved you in your life? I bet you there are sad or anxious or emotionally difficult things on that list. I bet you.
Right. Without question.
Yeah.
Without question. And
so why are we often
they are what make us even more brilliant and beautiful and courageous and incredibly supportive and helpful to others by acknowledging that, by knowing that, by accepting it, owning it.
It softens you.
It does.
It connects you to being human. It connects you to others, because they're also on this same journey. They don't have the Mr. Clean magic eraser that's going to eliminate pain. They don't have the little delete button in their own nervous system. And so it isn't just you, it's the people you love. You're not going to be able to be with them if you know nothing about these things that our mind can tell us are difficult. I don't want to have a feedback screech, but maybe I could disconnect the amplifier and and then I can have the sound as it is. And sometimes it's pretty loud. I mean, if I've had something happen, like that email yesterday, it was pretty loud, saying that my sweet Ingy at age 80 had died. That was a painful one. But loud doesn't mean bad. We listen to loud music too. Shrieks? No. Okay, I get it. But you can take a panic attack and you can turn it into a number 10 anxiety attack simply by pulling out the part that says, I can't have this, which you can learn how to do. The book walks through how to do it. And when you've done that, you have a number 10 anxiety attack, but it's not shrieking, it's just loud. Part of you that says, I can't, part of me that took me down to the point where I'm on the floor at 2:30 in the morning is the part that artificially amplifies this thing up into emotions that we didn't evolve to have. We didn't evolve for panic attacks that incapacitate us.
Right.
I mean, why would that happen? It's only because we have this clash between a system that's new, what you and I are doing right now, and these ancient systems that are 1,000 times older. And boom, in that clash, a lot of things happen. So you need to learn to put the dictator within on a leash, to be able to use problem solving when you have problems to solve, not as a tool to turn your own life into a problem to be solved, and you can't live until it's solved. You got to be wiser than that. And I think it's why, mindfulness work is everywhere now.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows we need something, and we're searching out in our wisdom traditions, our spiritual traditions, but let's not forget the science traditions.
Right. Well, and I love how you commingle them in your book. It's a fantastic book. I mean, for all of our listeners, I really recommend that you check out A Liberated Mind, How to Pivot Toward What Matters. You can get it wherever books are sold. It's really fantastic, and it's going to help you so much. And some of it is going to be a little bit tough, and that's okay. It just is. Before we leave today, I would like to close with the poem from the last page of A Liberated Mind.
Oh, how marvelous. What a great idea.
This poem is Hold Out Your Hand by Julia Fehrenbacher. Let's forget the world for a while, fall back and back into the hush and holy of now. Are you listening? This breath invites you to write the first word of your new story. Your new story begins with this: you matter, you are needed, empty and naked, willing to say yes and yes and yes. Do you see the sun shines day after day, whether you have faith or not? The sparrows continue to sing their song, even when you forget to sing yours. Stop asking, am I good enough? Ask only, am I showing up with love? Life is not a straight line. It's a downpour of gifts. Please hold out your hand. Ah,
isn't that marvelous?
so marvelous, so marvelous. So much so that I'm copying and pasting and printing and putting it on my wall, Stephen. It's just
That's awesome.
So beautiful.
She has a very nice little volume of poems, and I have in the book the link as to how to go get them. She actually let me put that poem in for free. I actually,
kind of her.
The book came out. I sent her an acknowledgement that included some money, but she is a very, very sweet person, and a marvelous, marvelous way to end the book, I think, and to end our conversation. Thanks for having the wisdom to do it that way.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for your time, for your book, for this conversation. I know that our listeners are going to be very grateful. That was Stephen C. Hayes, professor of psychology, prolific writer, and author of A Liberated Mind, How to Pivot Toward What Matters. You can get a copy of his new book wherever books are sold.